We are live.
We are live. Okay, good to know. All right. Yeah, so we went over paragraphs 1 through 5 last week. Absolutely important. We're going to be going through I don't want to call it the boring section, but the boring section of the contract. This is kind of the stuff that people don't pay attention to, that people get lost in the sauce. So definitely stuff that we need to go over so people actually have an understanding of what's actually happening in these contracts. Because unfortunately, the age-old realtors don't read really applies to contracts. There are realtors out there or salesperson people out there who've never actually sat down and read this contract cover to cover. And it's important to make sure you understand what's going on. Paragraph 6 is all about the title policy and the survey. There's a lot of hidden tricks in there that if you know, you can use or you can prepare for, make sure are not used against you. So it's extremely important to understand paragraph 6 for those reasons. Title policy: seller shall furnish the buyer at seller's or buyer's expense. An owner policy of the title insurance issued by blank title company. Now that's going to be the same title company who is holding the earnest money in the earlier section. Now, sellers and buyers expense in El Paso, and I know probably more than Dallas, has had a huge substantial change over the last 8 months to a year and a half, where I would say 99.9% of the time, the seller always paid the title policy. Now I'm saying to probably about 50-50, where the buyer is now saying, we will cover the expense of the title policy to give us a little bit of an edge on the contract. Since right now we know it's a seller's market, this is one of those things that a smart buyer's agent can do and say, listen, guys, here's a guaranteed $1,800. The seller's not going to have to pay anywhere between $1,500, $2,500, depending on the size of the property, that the seller's not going to be responsible for because we're covering it. So that's a huge negotiating tool that's a lot of people are starting to take advantage of. So we're seeing it's important to start looking at paragraph 6A on who is they're asking to pay the policy. Now, again, the top issued by that is the title company's name. We don't put a person's name in there. We don't put an escrow officer's name in there. That is Chicago Title, Sierra Title, Lone Star Title, Stewart Title, whichever title company you're using, that is what you're going to put in those marks. Title company in the amount of the sales price dated at or after closing, insuring buyer against loss against provisions of the title policy, subject to the promulgated exclusions, including existing building and zoning ordinances and the following exceptions. Now, it's going to list the most common exceptions that the title company is going to insure around and not insure. Restrictive covenants common to the platted subdivision in which the property is located. It is your duty as a real estate professional to have an understanding of the restrictive covenants for the most part of what's going on and what you're trying to sell. Because if there's something in there that is going to affect your buyer's ability to enjoy what they want to use that property for, they're going to hold you accountable. You need to make sure, are they allowed to have a fifth will on the property? There are some restrictive covenants out there that don't allow that. And if they buy this home with the sole purpose of making sure they can park their trailer or mobile home and cannot, they're not going to be happy. Standard printing exception of standby fees, tax, and assessments. They're not going to insure against those because they're going to make sure they're paid at closing. Liens created as part of the financing described in paragraph 3. They can't insure against the liens that are used to prepare this contract. Utility easements created by the dedication deed or plat of the subdivision in which the property is located. Utility easements are in effect. They take precedent. They're not going to insure around those. Now, they may do some survey deletions and things, and we'll talk about that shortly. Reservations or exceptions otherwise permitted by this contract or as may be approved by buyer in writing. Standard printing exception as to material rights, and the standard printing exception as to waters, tidelands, beaches, streams, where it matters. Now, paragraph 6A7 or line paragraph 6A7 has absolutely nothing to do with El Paso, Texas. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of beaches, streams, tidelands, but if you're in different areas of Texas, on the Gulf, anywhere where you are, this is definitely something that needs to be talked about. Ken, do you guys deal with this at all where you're at?
So yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. So what happens to us is it's not so much, it's mostly small rivers and creeks, because like we've had the heaviest rainy season we've had in the last 20 years, right? And so because of that, that can change the property line because of the way the waters run and move that creek, and if people don't understand that, they're like, well, no, my property's 10 foot or 100 foot over on the other side of this creek. Well, that whole creek bed moved, so it's no longer your property.
No, exactly. And that's important. And it's something that we in the desert just kind of joke about
Right.
As right, guys. You don't get in the boundary along the tide lines because we are so inland. It's not even funny. I mean, the only water source we have
what
is
I'll
the
tell you
Rio.
on that is that you're gonna get people that are very analytical that are gonna read every word of the contract. And you as an agent, if you don't understand this paragraph right here, this will hang you up worse than anything you'll ever be, because they'll go, I don't understand this wetlands thing, or I don't understand, and if you don't understand that and have the ability to explain it to them, I mean, you've just totally lost your professionalism when you're talking to that client.
Well, you lose your credibility. I mean, if
Right.
you don't understand the contract that you're explaining, what does that mean? And that's where the importance is. You can't be an expert on every line, but you better be able to explain every line and have a good understanding of it. And that's the point of these courses that we're trying to do. Number 8, the standard print exception as to discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area or boundary lines, encroachments or protrusions or overlapping improvements will not be omitted or deleted from the title, or will be omitted to read shortages in area at the expense of buyer or seller. Now, what this is kind of a protection for the client. It's 5% of the cost of the owner's policy. It's very reasonable cost. You can only get it if you actually do have a survey. So it is important to make sure that you don't ask for it when there's no survey. If it's a cash deal, we're not asking for a survey. But definitely an important thing to make sure it just gives a little bit more protection for the client, the buyer, and it's asking who's going to pay for it. Number 9, the exception or exclusions regarding minerals approved by the Texas Department of Insurance. Realistically, if you're in a subdivision, they have given up mineral rights years and years and years ago. If you struck oil, if you find gold, it doesn't belong to you. So understand that the mineral rights are almost always, if you're in a subdivision, not going to be there. Now, as far as minerals and approved by the state Texas Board of Insurance, that's going to be for like larger tracts of land or larger pieces of land that have a house on it that you're worrying about.
So, Andrew, we have an issue in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. The Barnett Shale runs right through the middle of Dallas-Fort Worth. Wow. And it's a very high area for gas production. Okay, so there's a community here called Arlington, Texas, and there's probably 10 subdivisions that all get paid mineral rights on each one of them. They do, because they sit right on top of the Barnett Shale.
But I'm gonna guess the people who live there don't get those rights.
A large percentage of them do.
Wow. See, like in El Paso, the majority of all subdivisions, the subdivider has sold the mineral rights years ago.
And that's the way it is in most every place we've been. But there's just that one line that runs right down this ridge, right? And you need to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah, because it's and what I've always told people when it comes to mineral rights is that okay, if you think you own them, then just show me a check. If you've gotten a check from somebody, then we'll figure out what to do. If you've never gotten a check, then the odds are you don't own them.
Well, and that's where paragraph 6B is so important, and it's something that people do a really bad job with. We're going right into the commitment. Within 20 days after the title company receives a copy of this contract, seller shall furnish to buyer commitment for title insurance and at buyer's expense legible copies of restrictive covenants and documents evidencing exceptions in the commitment. Now, this is not just another checkbox that you have to just write off, throw in your file, throw into your dot loop or whatever system you're using. You got to read these. You got to understand what it says, because everything that we have to do to solve this problem is going to be in that commitment. Every lien that the seller has, every easement, every encroachment, all of these things are going to be listed for you in this commitment, and you need to know. It'll tell you flat out if the mineral rights have been waived. It'll tell you right out all of these different things. But if you're not reading it and checking, if your seller tells you he owns the property free and clear, and the commitment says he has a lien for $200,000, I'm going to believe the title company until I get a proof that he's paid off that lien. And it's very important that you take that commitment, hand it to your broker, your manager, whoever's over you, and say, read this with me and let me know what we're looking at, because there's some valuable information in there that I don't want to say nobody, too many agents are just ignoring.
Right.
Extremely, extremely valuable information, guys. Please read it, understand it, know what's in there, know what's not. Seller also authorizes the title company to deliver the commitment and exception documents to buyer at buyer's address shown in paragraph 21. We'll get into paragraph 21 a little bit later, guys. Again, very risky to start putting your address or different things in that line. If the commitment and exception documents are not delivered to the buyer within the specified time for delivery will be automatically extended up to 15 days or 3 days before closing, whichever is earlier. If the commitment and exception documents are not delivered within the time required, buyer may terminate this contract and money will be refunded to the buyer. So even though it's the title company who's going to issue the commitment, it's the seller's responsibility. And if this title company can't get it done in a reasonable amount of time, the buyer has the right to terminate this contract. And you need to understand that and realize that. Now, the only time the title company is going to be in that situation is if there's some serious, tricky issues. There's a lot of things going on. I've seen it happen occasionally where, somebody died and then they had kids and those kids died and then they had to go find those kids. And, they can get extremely difficult and extremely involved, but trying to understand who owns the property, how it's going to work, who's going to get paid, what liens are now attached to the property because of those deaths and things can be very tricky. So making sure you understand is the seller's responsibility to get that to the buyer. Now you get it to the buyer with what you put in as the address in paragraph 21. And again, we'll go through that when we get to paragraph 21, but extremely important.
Hey, Andrew, you know what I noticed there? Is that what you just read was in very bold type. So if it's in bold type, what does that mean?
Well, I don't think we're in bold yet.
Well, we're okay. We're almost about okay. All right, I'm with you.
Surveys in bold type, and that's where the trick comes in, and that's where I trick people all the time on because we're still on paragraph 6B.
Got you. Okay.
6C survey, guys. This has caused so many issues, so many headaches, so many nightmares. I actually just did a class yesterday too with Andrew where we discussed where I went over where the Texas Realtors did a magazine talking about surveyors and issues that surveyors are having, and so it's just so valuable and so fitting. But the requirements are in this paragraph, and people don't read them, and people understand it. So we're going to talk about paragraph C real quick. 6C: survey must be made by a registered professional land surveyor, acceptable to the title company and buyer's lender. Checkbox one box only. Now here's the thing, guys. Here's what we have to understand: both the title company and the lender have to accept the previous survey if we're going to use one, and that's where this comes into play. So option 1, within blank days after the effective date of this contract, sellers shall furnish to buyer and title company's seller's existing survey of the property and a residential real property affidavit promulgated by the Texas Department of Insurance, a T-47 affidavit. Now here's the problem. More often than not, I'm going to use you as my guinea pig on this, Kent. When do most times do you get a copy of the survey?
At closing.
At closing, right? We get that survey the day of closing. At closing, the seller's filling out the T-47 affidavit.
Yeah.
We have just violated our contract.
Yeah.
We have promised to get that contract within blank days of the effective date. Usually you're going to see 3, 5. I've seen 7, but no more than that. So if we have not done that, we have now, if we read this contract in the very bold print that no one reads, even though it's bold, if seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing. So at closing, you show up with your previous survey. I've already ordered a brand new survey at your expense.
So let me tell you a story there, Andrew. So the very first listing I ever had as a brand new real estate agent, right? Yeah. I go in, I do all my stuff. I talk to my guy. We get the listing done. He hands me, I say, I need your, copy of your survey. He gives me a copy of the survey. The contract that we get on the listing is 3 days or whatever it was, right? So the survey is laying on my desk, right? It's an agent within my own office, right? And I'm good. So I start shuffling the paper. I look, I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to give her that survey. So it was 3 days. I gave it to her in 5. Guess who got a commission-ectomy that day?
Did you buy a new survey, Kent?
I bought the survey on my first listing I ever had to do because it was sitting on my desk and I didn't hand it to him.
Now here's the question. Did you also have a T-47 affidavit notarized by your client?
I did. They were both sitting there.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah. It was 100% my fault because I didn't pay attention to the timeline.
And that's the thing, guys. So it doesn't matter what's marked after that bold print, because if the sellers failed to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, and the seller's agent is an arm of the seller. So it's the seller's fault if the agent doesn't turn it in. That means, just as Ken said, it's going to be a commission shortage because you're paying for it.
Yeah, you're going to get a commissionectomy, my friend.
So now the rest of that sentence says, if the existing survey provided is not acceptable to the title company or buyer's lender, buyer should obtain a new survey at seller or buyer's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing. So the only time that the check mark box of seller or buyer is going to be used is if I've turned in the survey and T47 on time, and the lender or the title company have said, we're not going to accept the survey. If either of those parties says we're not going to accept it, then we have to get a brand new one, and who's going to pay for it? So I want you guys to understand, paragraph C1 is a lot of pitfalls for agents to make a mistake. Agents, I've seen them turn it in late. I've seen them never turn in with a T47 affidavit. I've seen all sorts of things. So be very careful and understand your timelines. Get a calendar, put the required dates of when you need to get stuff done in those calendars.
Right. So Andrew, I'd say this. So there's a couple things that I've noticed over the time. Is number one is if you go out there and you list a house and you walk outside and fall into a swimming pool, and you get a survey that doesn't have a swimming pool on it, you're probably gonna have to get a new one, right?
Exactly.
The other thing is if you walk out there and you see a survey that doesn't have a fence line on it, and there's a fence at the back of that yard, that's going to be an issue for a survey for the company. So just make sure that when you pay attention to what you're looking at when you look at that survey.
A lot of other things that are issues: creation of sheds or outbuildings,
right?
Creations of cement patios, sidewalks, those type of things. Planners encroaching the easements. All these things can truly affect you guys. So just because you have a survey from 20 years ago doesn't mean you can reuse it, and that's extremely important. So paragraph 2 and 3 of C are much easier to break down. One, within blank dates after the effect of this contract, buyer shall obtain a new survey at buyer's expense. Straightforward. Or within blank days after the effect of this contract, seller's expense shall furnish a new survey to buyer. So we either got buyer's going to buy a new one, seller's going to buy a new one, or we're going to use an existing survey within the timeline required, and included in that will be a signed T47 affidavit that does have to be notarized, so be aware of that, and given to the title company and the other agent within that time frame. So be very careful, make sure that is done. Now, objections that come into play. Buyer may object in writing to defects, exceptions, or encumbrances to title disclosed on the survey other than items 6A 1 through 7 above, disclosed in the commitment other than items 6A 1 through 9, or which prohibit following use or activity. Guys, you got to put something real there. This would be is if there's something you're truly trying to do, and you're worried that you're not going to be able to do it. I see more often than not residential use written there, and I don't know about you. You can't. It just kind of makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's like if a house can't be used for residential use, we got a bigger problem.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about it is, so you got to think: is it an investment property? If they're buying it as an investment property, you got to put that. You got to put rental. We have several subdivisions in our area where they don't allow you to park RVs, boats. But here's the one that really gets me is utility service vehicles. So if you work for, Encore, right, and you drive your Encore truck home, you can't park it in your driveway.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy. But so if you but you got to say, what do you do for a living? Do you do this? If you do, it needs to go in a contract. That way we have our out if they come back and say, oh, well, you can't park that utility truck here.
Right. Another big one would be like
I've been in that fight more times than you want to know.
No, absolutely. Another would be if you have a home business that you're worried about. If you want to run a home daycare, you want to make sure you're going to put in there, have the ability to run a licensed home daycare out of the business. Because if you're not, and if you now bought a building to be able to do that and you can't, that's a problem. But
another thing with that, Andrew, is that home business thing. This is another thing. So a lot of people are doing, especially ladies, are doing these little boutiques out of their home.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're stacking stuff up on their front porch, and UPS is picking them up it's one thing when they deliver something. It's another thing when they're picking it up. and you've got neighbors watching this, right? And neighbors are the worst, man. They'll turn you in a heartbeat, right? You know,
Absolutely.
so make sure I mean, this is where what I've always called needs determination. When you're talking to your client and you're trying to figure out what it is that they're trying to do, you got to dig deep. When I ask a question, I say, do you have a home business? Yes. Well, tell me about that. And dig deep so that you don't get yourself in trouble on that thing.
Absolutely. Now the rest of this section is just buyer must obtain the earlier of the closing date or blank days after buyer receives the commitment, exception documents, and survey. So you have to have received all three of them, and then the clock starts for your number of days that you have to object. Buyer's failure to object within the time allowed will consummate a waiver of buyer's right to object, except the requirements in Schedule C of the commitment are not waived by buyer. Provided seller is not obligated to incur any expense, seller shall cure any timely objections of buyer or any third-party lender within 15 days after seller receives the objections, which is the cure period. Closing date will be extended as necessary if objections are not cured within the cure period. Buyer may, by delivering notice to seller within 5 days after the end of the cure period, terminate this contract in earnest money or refund it to buyer or waive the objections. If the buyer does not terminate within the time required, buyer shall be deemed to have waived the objections. If commitment or survey is revised or any new exception documents is delivered, buyer may object to any new material revealed in this revised commitment or survey or new exception documents within the same time stated in the previous paragraph to make objections, beginning when the revised commitment, survey, exception documents are delivered. So this is what this is saying is I have timeframes. If I object to the survey, if I object to any of these things, I have to do it within a certain period of time or I waive my right. Now, we as real estate professionals are required to give several notices to our clients. The contract that was written by the Texas Real Estate Commission does this for us. In paragraph E, title notices does just that. It is saying an abstract or title policy. The broker advises the buyer to an abstract or title covering the property examined by an attorney of buyer selection, or buyer should be furnished with and obtain a title policy. Title policy is furnished. Commitment should be promptly reviewed by an attorney of buyer's choice due to their time limitations of buyer's right to object. This is a notice we are required to give all of our clients, and we have done so in this contract. Paragraph E2, membership in property owners association. If you are selling a property that is part of a homeowners association, you need to know what's in there, what's it cover, what's it not. The property is or is not subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association. If the property is subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association, seller notifies buyer under subsection 5.012 of the Texas Property Code that has purchased a property in this residential community identified in paragraph 2A in which the property is located. You are obligated to be a member of the property owners association and restrict the covenants governing the use and occupants of the property and a dedicatory instrument governing the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the residential community have been or will be recorded in the real property records of the county in which the property is located. Very important. So if you're selling a property that is in a homeowners association and you receive a contract where it's marked as not, you need to correct this because you need to make sure everybody's aware what's happening and how and why.
So Andrew, one of the things there that I see happen a lot is that the agents believe that it's the title company's responsibility to provide that information.
Ooh.
And it's the seller's responsibility to
Absolutely.
Now title companies will do it for you if they have it, right? And they used to do a lot, but it's gotten more where there's costs involved in it and things like that a lot of times now. And so remember, as a listing agent, it's your responsibility to help that seller make sure that we get that information and get it delivered on time to the right person, right? And that we actually don't just send an email. I don't just forward my email from me to Andrew. I need to look at the documentation to make sure my contract coincides with what the information in that document says.
Absolutely. And that's the big thing is HOAs have learned that this is a moneymaker where they can charge every time somebody wants to do this. So they'll say it has to be brand new stuff from us or else it doesn't count. So make sure you understand what HOA you're working with and what their requirements are going to be prior to listing the property.
And I know we're going to get into the amendments later on in this series, but in that amendment, you got to remember when you're checking things off, the homeowners associations have figured out how to get around some loopholes in there. So instead of a transfer fee, they'll call it, whatever, another fee. We have a little homeowners association here close to me that they have a $10 transfer fee, but they have a $6,000 fee for any movement of property.
Wow.
Right.
Another bolded and underlined, guys. If you are obligated to pay assessments to the Property Owners Association. The amount of the assessments is subject to change. Your failure to pay the assessments could result in enforcement of the association's lien and a foreclosure of the property. You could lose a $350,000 house for not paying $100 dues. So you need to make aware of that. We have informed you. We have bolded it. We've underlined it. Done everything we can to disclose to you. You're buying this home with the understanding that you may have to pay dues. Section 207.003 of the Property Code entitles an owner to receive copies of any document that governs the establishment, maintenance, or operations of a subdivision, including but not limited to restrictions, bylaws, rules, and regulations, and resale certificate from a property owner association. A resale certificate contains information, including but not limited to statements specifying the amount and frequency of regular assessments, and style and cause number of lawsuits to which the property owner association is a party, other than lawsuits relating to unpaid ad valorem taxes of an individual member of the association. These documents must be made available to you by the Property Owners Association or the association agent on your request. And this is that moneymaker that I was talking about. There are a lot of HOAs that charge large amounts for a resale certificate, but you have to have it prior to closing. Again, in bold, if buyers concerned about these matters, the CHREC promulgated addendum for property subject to mandatory membership in a property owner association should be used. That is a form we will be going over when we do forms, but we want to make sure on that. Now, I want to
make sure that you guys, at some point in time when we get there, that amendment right there, you can cover your client in the amendment, but you need to understand it. So I'm looking forward. That's one of my favorite amendments. I love to talk about that one.
It's a neat amendment, and it really goes through a lot of stuff. I wanted to get through chapter or paragraph 6 today, guys, but it is just huge with so much stuff. We are going to stop there. We're going to pick up a statutory tax districts next week and make sure you understand that, and that'll go nicely into property condition. I want to make sure Ken has plenty of time to talk about the great stuff he's got going on. So as of now, I'm actually about to stop sharing my screen.
Look at that.
The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it, my friend. So today I am going to show you how to utilize the least expensive thing you'll ever do that will make you the most money you'll ever make if you'll just do it. All right. And so what we're going to talk about today is the art of the handwritten note. All right. So George H. Bush, not W, George H. Bush, every day he was most of his entire adult life, but for sure every day in his presidency, he wrote a minimum of 10 thank you notes. All right. So if the president of the United States has the time to write 10 thank you notes, I'm pretty sure you have the time to write 3 or 4 or 5. Right. Let's make that real clear. Right. And I know how busy you are. I get that. Right. But this is one of the most important things you'll ever do in your entire life. So this little concept right here will make you the most money for the least amount of income that you've ever done. All right. So let's talk about what does it mean? What does the note do? So if I pick the phone up and I call Andrew and I say, hey, how you doing? We chat a little bit. We talk about whatever. He says, hey, my kid scored a touchdown this week. Cool, great. So that's stuff I'm filing away. I'm listening for him to say something to me that I can put in a note that makes it cool. It's not my job. I'm not Zig Ziglar, right? I'm not Paul Harvey. I'm not trying to go out there and motivate you to the end of the earth. What I want to do is make sure that you understand that I think enough of you to take time out of my day, right, and spend it on writing something for you. All right. You know how powerful that is? People just don't do that kind of thing anymore. And there's nothing that drives me more insane than somebody going, thank you for the 700, likes or comments on my Facebook page for my birthday. Why did you not sit down and handwrite them a birthday card and send it to them? I guarantee you that's worth more than all of those likes and birthday that ever happened.
Can I say something on the thank you notes? Because
absolutely.
I am not nearly as religious as I should be on this, but I will say this: there was a short time I did everything I could. I was writing 5 a day. I was doing my job. The whirlwind got in the way. No excuse.
Right.
I had written a thank you note. We had a title company had his marketing people came out and did a class for our office.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote the president of the title company a note and just said, "Hey, your two guys were insanely professional. I just want to tell you that." I sent that note off. I got a call from the president. I got a call from both the staff members. People were like, "Holy crap, man. Thank you so much for that."
Yeah.
It went so far and did so much that it was, you can tell in this world today, you get a note, handwritten note. You're like, "Oh, I'm going to sit down. I got to sit down for this. Hold on. I'm going to take my time."
Absolutely. And so here's something that I'll tell you too, is you got to think about, I mean, we do everything with intention, right? That's what we are. We're salespeople. We do things with intention. So am I going to write my closer at the title company that took care of me the note? Absolutely. But who doesn't get a note is her assistant. Guess who did all the work? Yeah. Think about that. You send that assistant the note, you're golden for life, baby. They're going to take care of you from now on because nobody recognizes them, right? So think about who you're recognizing. Okay. Anybody that does anything good for you, so the way I do it is I make my phone calls. The instant I make the phone call, I sit down and I grab the note and I start writing a note. All right. I'm going to show you a little bit about that here in just a second. But the note cards are sitting right next to me. So here's just a little trick. So I have this baggie. Okay. Everybody sees this baggie? This baggie stays in my briefcase. All right. In this briefcase, in this baggie, I have note cards. All right. I've got my cool little stickers that I like. I get them from Buffini, but any UPS store or whatever can do it, and mine say, "Oh, by the way, I'm never too busy for your referral." All right. I've got those in there. I've always got, several of my business cards in there, so I don't have to worry about putting them in. I've always got stamps in there. Right. So no matter where I am, let's say I'm at the doctor's office sitting in the lobby. When you sit in the lobby, the whole lobby's got their phone out and they're doing this, right? Can you see me? They're scrolling. Nobody's talking. Nobody's doing so. So what do? I reach into my baggie and I just sit down and start writing notes. And you ought to see the group look at you when you do that. I mean, people are like, "What is wrong with that guy?" Right? But you take advantage of time other people waste makes a huge difference in your life. Okay. You'll learn that little lesson to take advantage of time that other people waste. It'll make everything in the world different. Now, so when we get there, I've lost a piece of it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So how do you physically put the note together to make the most impact? Right. Because it's a big deal. Right. All right. So I'm going to show you. So this note's to Andrew. I don't know if you get there, Andrew. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. All right. So if you'll notice, there's no labels on it. I didn't put a return address label on it. Everything on it's handwritten. All right. Okay. There's a big part of that, guys. When people start getting labeled notes, they think it's coming from some marketing department and they throw them in the trash. Right. I want to handwrite everything I do. So when Andrew gets it, said, "Man, I might need to open that up. There might be money in it." Whatever, right? So so he's going to open it, right? So handwrite everything. Handwrite your return address. Handwrite the address. Make sure everything, guys. It's such a small amount of time, but you just got to do it. Okay. Now here's one. I'll give you another little tip here. Is that if I don't know Andrew's address, where to send him mail, right? I need a dialogue that gets me in place to make sure I can get the mail to him. The mistake most people would do is they'd go online and they'd look in Realist Tax or somewhere and they'd say, "Oh, I'll just look up his home address." All right. And I think El Paso may be similar to the way it is around Midlothian, Texas, but about a fifth of my database has a P.O. box. So if I send the mail to their home address, they're not getting it. I just wasted my time and 55 cents. Right. So my dialogue's real simple. As I'm talking to Andrew, we're talking about whatever going on in his life, and that at some point in time, I'm going to ask a simple question. Andrew, if I was going to send you something in the mail, where would I send it? He may say, oh, I'd get my mail at the office or P.O. Box 123, whatever, El Paso, Texas, right? So you got to do this. All's got to be with intention, guys. You got to think these things through, and so I'm always going to, if I don't know for sure, I'm going to ask that question. Now, if I'm talking to, a young lady, I'm not going to say, hey, what's your home mailing address? That's not going to happen. But if I say, hey, if I was going to send you some mail, where would I send it? That's a completely different question, right? All right. So make sure that you understand that you got to get that stuff right, because we want this to be effective, right? I don't want it to be expensive. I want it to be effective. All right. So once I've done that, okay, and I got it, I've got my handwritten addressed envelope to him. I'm gonna throw my stamp on it. Then I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna write him a little note. Right. So what I want you to notice is that these little stickers, I don't put them on the back of the note card like you would a wedding invitation, right? Because all they're going to do is tear through it and not see what it says, right? I put it on the inside, right? So the inside, I use that sticker to hold my business card in it, all right? So I put that sticker in there. It says, oh, by the way, I'm never too busy for your referral. And I've got my business card in there, okay? So And I've got a friend of mine, Dennis, who called me one day. I was talking to him on the phone. He said, man, you've been sending me this stuff for like 5 or 6 years. I've got a stack of your business cards. It's about half this high of my desk over there. Would you like me to send them back? I'm like, no, I'd like you to hand them out. So, but I send them every time. That business cards are the cheapest advertisement we'll ever have, guys, right? But it's just that one little reminder that will get them to send me that referral, right? So the business card sticker inside, top level. Okay. Then we get to the note, and you probably can't read it. This is going to look weird on the internet. I got it, but it says, it was great to speak to you today. I'm looking forward to meeting you for coffee. That's all it's got to say. Okay. You don't have to go in there and go, oh my God, I'm trying to make you, I'm not trying to motivate you to the rest of your life. I've got real estate agents that were with other companies that I've sent these cards to, that in their trainings talk about, Kent sent me a card. It's on my mirror in my bathroom. It's been there for 2 years. I read it every day. I mean, and so it has nothing to do with anything other than the act of doing it. Right. So, people will love you for this if you'll just take the time to do it. And it's the most inexpensive thing you'll ever do that'll make you the most money you'll ever make. Okay. So that's the handwritten note. Don't mess around with it. Everybody gets a handwritten note. Everybody, anybody involved in every transaction you're doing, from transaction coordinators to whoever, they all get a handwritten note. Go.
I want to stress, and hopefully you agree with me, that just the KISS method of it. Just keep it simple. I think so many people stress out about, you're not writing a novel. You don't have to write something extraordinary to each different person. They can all be kind of very similar in regard. But I think so many people stress out because they're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to write. Yeah. Guys, you're not writing your life story. You're not telling them, I'll never forget the time you and I strolled through the beaches and the sun was setting. We're not doing that crap. Hey, great talking to you. Look forward to our future business. I think that's a lot of people kind of get stuck at that I don't know what to write stage.
So Andrew, think about this. If I sent you this note and you opened it up and the only 2 words in there were thank you, what does that mean to anybody? It's huge, man. I mean, that's how simple this is, right? All right. So the next step is this. So as I'm learning this process and trying to figure out how to, take advantage of the handwritten note, I'm going to tell you 2 little tricks here. Okay. So these are tricks of the trade. So if you have a listing, right, and the agent that brings the buyer to you is not an agent in your office, because we want to be very discreet and not mess with our own agents, right? But the instant that transaction closes, the client relationship is over. Okay, that's just the way it is. So with that's Andrew can explain that to you at some other time, right? But that's the way it is. So every time I did a listing, I would send a note to the person that bought the house. Okay, so I know the address, right? I sold it. Yeah. so I'd write a note. And my note was very simple. Hey, this is Kent Bush. I was the agent on the other side of the transaction. Thank you for such a smooth deal. If you need anything, I know you need a doctor, you need a mechanic, you need a dentist, you need to know the best restaurant, whatever you need to know, don't hesitate to call me. Okay. So that's a little term that we consider is called adopting the buyer. Because what do we know? The agent on the other side is not going to do it. So now that buyer now gets a note from me every week. Or every month, not every week, right? And so they get a note from me. So I adopt every buyer I've ever done. I can tell you, there's one buyer that I adopted that way. I sold the house 3 times. Well, we talked about this last week, and that's what I did was I adopted that buyer, and that was worth 5 transactions to me. What a big deal, right? Then the other thing is this. So I was talking to a ton of top agents that were working the same system that I worked. And it's the Buffini system. So I always give Brian credit for what he does, right? And so I'm working this system. And, as I'm going through and I'm talking to them and I'm going, okay, so I've talked to 20 agents, right? And they're all doing pretty good. But why are you doing 25% more than everybody else? And I'll never forget this one agent that looks at me dead in the eyes. He said, well, I don't know. Maybe it's because I send out 800 birthday cards a year. So she handwrites 800 birthday cards a year, right? That alone in itself, she said, I get phone calls every week that says, other than my insurance guy that sent me a generic card, you're the only birthday card I've ever gotten. Think about that. Think about your last birthday. How many birthday cards did you get in the mail?
None.
Exactly. I mean, how crazy is that? So if you're the one doing that, another thing, it's not the birthday card, it's the act of doing it. Right? Now, do you really think when somebody says real estate and you send them a birthday card that they're not going to go, oh, you need to call my friend Andrew? I mean, come on, man. This stuff is so simple. It's so simple that we just overlook it, right? And so if we'll just stay simple, guys, you got now. And I know there's tons of ways. We're going to talk about farming and some of that stuff later on in this segment. But right now, I just want you guys to do the simple, easy stuff. If you don't know their birthday, just look it up on Facebook. If you go back on Facebook, it'll show you everybody's birthday that you have in there in the same month in one page, right? Just sit down and write them all a birthday card that one day and send them out, I mean, this stuff ain't hard. It's just not hard, right? But we just got to go do it. So come to an end, be prepared, take advantage of the time other people waste. You're sitting there at lunch, you're sitting there at a break. If you're a dual career agent that you're working and trying to sell real estate, when everybody else is taking a break and smoking cigarettes or doing whatever they're doing, you write 2 notes. If you do that every day of the week, that's 10 notes out there in the marketplace. It'll change your life, guys. It will totally change your life if you'll just pay attention to it and do it. So with that being said, that's what I got. Any questions?
I don't think so. I think that's the key is, just do it. I mean,
yeah,
we give ourselves so many stomach blocks and reasons why we can't do something. When at the end of the day, all you got to do is sit down, write them.
But you have to have them with you. You have to be prepared. This bag changed my life. I'm just going to tell you, because when I think about it, I go, crap, I always have this with me. I don't care if I'm on an airplane, if I'm sitting in the doctor's office, where I always have this bag with me. That way I never can make an excuse not to do it. Yeah. And it changes everything, guys. So let's go make some money. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Well, Andrew, I always enjoy this time with you, my friend.
It's always good stuff. Let me know. Hopefully, guys, let us know. Send us a comment. Send us a conversation. Tell us what you think. If you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, disagreements. We're not saying we're perfect, absolutely, in any way, shape, or form.
No.
But like between the two of us, we fought enough battles and seen enough wounded that we can tell the horror stories all day long. So, guys, we don't want you to.
The other side of that, Andrew, is we've seen enough successes too to know if you'll look at it and listen to what we tell you. Yeah. So here's what I want everybody to realize. There's no reason for Andrew and I to get on this and spend this time to tell you something doesn't work. I mean, why in the world would we do that? Right? Makes no sense to anybody. Right? So if we're telling you it works, then what you have to do is go on belief that it does. Now, and you'll see, as the more you're around me and the more you hear from me, I have a simple saying: persistent and consistent over time. If you'll just be persistent and consistent over time with the little things we tell you to do, you'll wake up one day and go, how in the world did I buy this island in the Bahamas? And that's just really kind of the way it is, guys. So, all right, Andrew, nice time, brother.
Always a pleasure. Let's we'll pick it up next week. I'll continue on with the contract. We'll give you some more ideas. And guys, at the end of the day, this is a referral business. I mean, if you watched my Tea with Andrew class, we went over the sellers, where they're getting their business, and it's referral. I mean, most of them have already talked to. They were either told who to use or used before who they're getting with. And in this business, it's not who you are, it's who you know. And be the person that people know. That's the key to the game. So keep it up, keep up the work, do what we say, and we promise you'll be successful. Appreciate it, guys.
Okay. Have a great one, man.